Hi, everybody. It's Melody LeBaron with another Agents of Transformation interview. And I'm thrilled today to bring you Dean Walker. Dean was my facilitator for a course that I took in April of 22, called Dancing at the Edge, Resilience for the Collapse Aware Community. And many of you will know, and many of you who've been following me will know that my words for 2022 are resource resilience, my own and those in my care. And so when I saw when I looked at the website for this course, everything in me said, yes, yes, even though I didn't know anything about it, didn't know the facilitators, had never heard of you, Dean.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to preface, this by saying, I come to this community of that includes climate scientists with a bit of a different experience, past history. I come not because I'm a scientist, but because my body is so finely attuned to the earth that I had a physical sensation. I have physical sensation when things like the Gulf oil spill or a tsunami or things like this happen. I started 5 or 6 years ago following these climate scientists in groups on Facebook so that I could understand what my body was responding to. And so I am probably more aware of our climate crisis. I'm paying more attention to it than most people I know around me, and certainly probably than most people who will be watching this. So I was very surprised because most people in this community are sharing a lot of information that the left brain must process in order to understand and orient. Where are we? What's happening? Why are there climate refugees even in our own country? There are people who are homeless because of climate crisis. And so I was stunned in your course to discover that it was not a left brain process, that in fact the left brain was able to take a little staycation and sit on the couch while the right brain became activated. And the other thing I'm going to say, Dean, about this course is that I have never in any online experience outside of my own priestess circles that I facilitate, I have never felt so connected to the other people in the group. And it was a world, we had people from around the world in this course. And I have never felt so connected, and I have never felt so fully present. And I really acknowledge with a deep bow of gratitude that your facilitation allowed the truest kind of resourcing to happen for all of us. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in the way you want to be introduced. But I wanted to preface that by just sharing my experience with your course, and then just ask us to just dive right into your story. How did you come to be facilitating resilience courses for the collapse aware population?
Yeah. What a delightful introduction. Yeah. Kind of a bit moved just by your introduction. Thank you. And I also just knew right away with the way that you participated in the depth at which you would share when you participated in the 5 Saturdays of April that we did together. I knew there was just an affinity and a resonance that, I didn't know quite what you had done, what you were bringing in, but it was something. It was something with some real spiritual and energetic heft, if you will. So it's been really a joy to get to know you, and I'm so delighted to be here speaking with you and your viewers, listeners, and just previews of coming attractions. I'm soon going to be inviting you to come on my podcast.
Oh, I would love that.
I've just really enjoyed, especially your work that you do with grief. I do a tremendous amount of that as well, and I just really have enjoyed your. There's a way in which my system relaxes with how you share and how you offer up what you appear to be offering, again, just reading your book and getting started with that. So anyway, thank you. And I now will actually do what you asked, which is to introduce a little bit. So again, I'm Dean Walker. I live in Southern Oregon. I have been involved with transformation-based training and coaching for, 35 years or so. And for longer than that, with the psychospiritual practices, the shamanic practices, the earth-based and transformation-based practices that really became the foundation for my professional career. And then what really has surprised me was how much those shamanic, plant medicine-based, land-based, transformation-based practices end up being the foundation for this body of work that you're now, so generously sharing about. These were the elements that I knew to be literally life-saving and life-giving for me, but I had no idea that they would shove themselves right up to the front of the line in terms of what I am now using first and foremost. And most of the organizational work, the transformation-based stuff that was more on the commercial end of things, the kind of making things work better in the business as usual environment, that version of transformation, which I really just don't have any patience for anymore. It's been an extraordinary shift and ride, if you will, after researching and writing my book in 2017 called The Impossible Conversation. That was really reflecting the since about 2010, I've been aware of not just the climate change and the usual words that we use to describe some of the larger challenges that we're facing globally. But actually, once I kind of had my woke moment from a few trusted resources, I started looking into it. And it was actually, what was is that climate change is a very small and controlled narrative part of our world. And I had to go in and research what I was introduced to as abrupt climate change. And that ends up being far more the accurate picture that I ended up writing a book about, because I knew that most people wouldn't do that level of research. And it was daunting research. And I guess
tell me what year was that published?
2017 is when I put it out, and I started really writing on it early in 2015. And I think that the real shocker for me was that I did vet the material about abrupt climate change, and I got out of that as quickly as I could, because what I couldn't tolerate in my own system was the whole thing about the deniers of that whole notion. It was so obviously I don't know many more appropriate words than evil.
Right. Right. There are, I call this predatory delay by
Mhm.
predatory interests. There's
Right,
a
right.
group of us in the climate aware community just calling it what it is. It's predatory.
Yeah, yeah. And so I then shifted my attention to a stack of other global existential level concerns that are actually coming at us or engaged right now
Right.
that are far more urgent than climate change.
Yeah.
And so with that kind of, grappling with that scale of global concerns and existential level concerns, and then denial on top of it, and denial not just from the people who are actively twisting the facts and doing that stuff, but really a part of all of us that really just don't want to hear it.
It's
I
it's the
I
first
don't.
stage of grief, right?
Right, right. And I, definitely have stepped my way time and time again as I've cycled through, Kubler-Ross's stages.
Right.
And to step right back into what, again, you so generously shared from your experience of that workshop that we were in together. I could see that through, again, my lifetime of practices that told me that that's the dimension that matters, the right hemisphere, if you will, that where relationship resides, where context resides, where the mystery, our relationship with the mystery of life resides, and so on. And it was clear to me, this is one of the embarrassing parts of telling you this story, is I ended up writing this book. It was the first thing I've written at scale. I've never written a book before, and much less having to learn how to learn about these incredibly complex topics. And so I did include a massive amount of left brain content,
Period.
the
Right.
linear, the content, the facts and figures, and so on.
Right.
And I knew that was problematic, but I didn't have any coaching to trust myself and be able to bring in what I would rather have brought in. But I think it's still a decent book, and so people can check it out. And if they, I believe it will still be quite informative.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a good foundation. It's a
Yeah.
good foundation to begin to understand what's happening,
Yeah.
because we know, anybody who's paying attention in Western culture right now knows that the media is very tightly controlled,
Yeah.
and they're only getting some information. And what we're really seeing on the national stage here in the United States is a puppet show.
Right.
Our politics are a puppet show that's all controlled by big money, big corporations.
Yeah.
In 2010, Citizen United made sure of that. And so we are looking at the effects of corruption in our government and in our media. And so thank you for doing that arduous task of doing all that research and engaging the way you had to, so you can lay a foundation so people can really understand one of the aspects that we are facing. And I don't know, unless you really are attuned to what I call the anima mundi, the soul of the world, of which I am a part, you are a part, we are all a part. The plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, like, we are all participating in the anima mundi. And unless you're really attuned, you might be able to, push away some of the news and kind of go into a numbness and just carry on with business as usual.
Right.
And I found that your course begins with the whole understanding, you present a model that helps us understand
Mhm.
why we need to be in a business as usual mindset, why that might be a value, and what there is beyond that, what there
Yeah.
is for us, and a way that we can hold what's happening that is beyond this sort of indoctrinated, numb, business as
Mhm.
usual place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yeah, just a brief recap of one piece of what you just described. The model that I came up with, in particularly in writing the book, was really just straight out of my experience of that lifetime of practices, where the lifetime of practices was telling me humanity has disconnected from all the primary sources of meaning and relationship in a human life. And for ease of conversation, I break that down into we've disconnected from deeper self, from other people, from earth, and from soul. And there are massive costs, like ineffable costs, like impossible to overstate the importance of the costs. And the primary one of which is that in order to participate and reap the benefits of this business as usual culture, we had to disconnect from all those sources of meaning and relationship. And what that meant was we would forfeit our center, all the different ways that we can orient ourselves into what is our core truth. You started us out by speaking about how you had found a way to reference, deeply internally reference, what is true. That is, I would call, your center, you having found a felt sense of center.
Right.
And what most people in the world don't realize is we don't know what we don't know about having lost that center.
Right.
So jumping back ahead to this shared experience in April in this workshop, what we did together was jump ourselves as quickly as possible into a felt shared sense of, first, an individual sense of I'm jumping into an immediate immersion of my own truth, my own center. And then to be able to do that with others in a way that I can literally feel it right now as I'm recounting it. And that, in a nutshell, is what I got to after thinking, so what, I put out this book, I can see what's going on in the world. I know that we've disconnected. How can I set up the kind of resources and coursework and so on that I was hoping to have when I had my woke moment? Like, I looked around and there's not much.
No.
Still to this day, there's more than there's ever been. So yay. But the vast majority of it is left brain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, long story short, is what had me lean as far as I'm leaning in the sharing of this work and the sharing of these practices, and inviting people to find their own practices, find their own center, and notice that all of that really doesn't have anything to do with saving the world or fixing anything. The last thing I want to do is put the brakes on for anyone who is brave enough to take on activism. Like that speaks for them. God bless them. And I want to support them with everything I can, all the tools that I can to keep them inspired and connected and moving forward. But this is, I believe, in the same ballpark as the people in the wisdom traditions for thousands of years who committed their entire lives to living from this center, to living from that kind of inner reference that you were first describing to us.
Yeah.
So it's a combination, it's the intersection of ancient wisdom traditions, spiritual traditions, and the energetics that I think I'm picking up that you are offering in your work, what you call your priestess work, and
Right.
even the organizational work. You've got to be scanning the energetics,
Right.
and the only way to scan energetics is to be present.
Right.
So that's
Right.
the nature of the work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's profound. You and I have had very different paths that have led us into this beautiful place.
Yeah.
And where there is our shared values and understandings and context, and as you say, mystery.
Mhm.
The mystery. And I think the other thing that sort of separates me from most people in some of these climate aware, collapse aware communities is that I work with the dying.
Mhm.
I have the honor and the privilege since 1990 of assisting at deathbeds.
Mhm.
And I have seen death done well. And I've seen healing, miraculous healing happen when a person realizes, oh, this is it. My doctor has recommended that I get my affairs in order. I have a few months. What do I need so that I can feel complete? And what do my family members need? And I've seen miraculous, beautiful healings take place. I understand from losing 13 of my own closest loved ones, friends, closest family, that the greatest gift that we can ever give in this lifetime is to stand in someone else's consciousness as a reference point for love. And I've seen this happen at, at in the dying process, in the dying journey. And I've also seen death fracture and split and divide and create chaos and create confusion and harm when what's actually happening is not acknowledged. And we pretend like we're not resourced enough to talk about it and to be present with what's happening. And there's a lot of resistance, and that always ends badly. So I'm not someone who wants to bring resistance. I'm not someone who wants to waste my life force in resisting what I see happening around me. What I do want to do is to be centered in that way you are describing, where I am such a stand for my own values and I'm such a stand for love that it doesn't matter if I personally, individually have another 5 minutes to live or 5 years or 50 years. I will remain a reference point for love in the consciousness of those in my care long after I'm gone. That's what matters to me. And it seems to me, in the 5 Saturdays that we were together, that your tools and your teachings and the techniques we practice together allow people to do that in chaotic, uncertain, difficult situations. Allow us to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, beautifully said.
So, so what would you recommend, Dean, for someone who was willing to come out of business as usual
Mhm.
and begin to explore? Obviously, get your book, read your book, and have the left brain data that they need to really understand the situation.
Sure.
But But as far as resourcing their resilience so that they feel prepared to stand as a reference point for their values and their love
Mhm.
in the places that they care about, what would you recommend?
Yeah. Uh, my experience is that people, here's an oversimplified kind of ladder of different levels at which people, in my experience, come in and engage with what's actually going on the planet. It starts out in business as usual, where there is no need for resilience skills, because
Right.
people's lives are full and they don't really even thinking about it. And all we need to do is get the right political party voted in next time, or, we'll do a little tweaking here, a little fixing there, and everything's fine. And I don't have time for it anyway. I got to go pick up the kids at soccer or whatever it is. And
Right.
so that's business as usual. And there's really not much of a resilience. Uh, there's not much of a call for resilience skills there until what I often, excuse my, this kind of a rough example, but I love it because people really hear it. There's this mental health professional in the USA that I listen to a lot. His name is Mike Tyson. He's, of course, a boxer. And one of his famous quotes is, everybody's got a life plan until you get punched in the face. So that's Mike Tyson. That's kind of how I think sometimes. So, the world is plenty ready to punch people in the face these days, figuratively.
Right.
So we've had a few global punches in the face, like a pandemic, how about? Or, and all the many impacts that came out of that, like people not being able to afford a home or rent a home, falling behind in their rents and so on. We've had huge challenges that any one of which at scale would be considered
A
that
punch in the
get
face.
your attention, punch in the face. For people who are kind of at that level of like, they're realizing there's some rough stuff going on. They might not call it collapse, and it doesn't matter. I'm not fixated on that word, but we could at least agree that we've got very troubled times going on.
Mhm.
And that word troubled means different things to different people on a very personal level, their region, their city, their neighborhood, their family, or globally. And so what I would recommend is, as soon as somebody hits that level of, there's something really troubling going on and I don't know how to deal with this, it's a shock to my system, but I know that I'm not ready for this one and I'm not ready for the next one that seems like it's coming really soon. It would be good for me to learn some skills. It'd be good for me to expand my capacity to be present, instead of what usually happens if we get punched in the face is we're no longer in our body. We're no longer present. And I can't be of service to the people I love if I'm not present.
Right.
So at that level, it's good to seek out basic resilience skills, basic self-regulation and co-regulation skills. Regulation meaning, if I've been knocked off center by life, how great is my toolkit, my inner toolkit, to be able to bring myself back to that awareness, to that being centered and being present. Those skills are available. People could come in, check out my website, which is livingresilience.net. Are very excited to be soon going to a Mighty Networks platform, which will be lots of resources, just like what we're talking about, available at a fingertips, just choose and go, kind of almost a library of different resources like that. And people can, hopefully we'll relay my contact information if people have a question like, I want more of these resilience skills. Where can I look? What books would you recommend? Videos and so on. There are plenty of them. The next level up is the people who, for instance, in Houston, when Hurricane Harvey came through, all of a sudden people's homes are flooded for miles. And so we and 50 other families are sleeping in the high school gym and wondering how on earth are we going to get our lives back together. That implies a whole different skill set, which means if I'm, head of a family and I've been reeling over these past couple of days, now I realize I need a whole skill set so that I'm ready next time, and I'm far more able to be of service to the people I love. Those I would call practices of reconnection. And those are a far more intricate and involved set of practices. To a person will gather them for themselves, but I can certainly be of assistance to help. What are the menus I can choose from for these skills and so on? The last element, because that practices of reconnection level may just be for the rest of a person's life. Is just as time cycles through, I go to the next generation of practices of reconnection, and then I can exchange them. I can train my own family with the practices that'll be useful for them, and so on. But what I've found is this final level in this little progression that I'm describing is the transformative. So the first aid level of resilient skills that we started with, the practices of reconnection, which can be very extensive and engaging in many different ways. What I've found is that as people take on those practices of reconnection, those deeper practices, they start to nudge into these elements that you started us looking at earlier on, this what we call right brain orientation for my attention, that is where in addition to the appreciation of the mystery and context and relationship and those elements, this is the zone where if I'm doing these practices, I find myself more and more connected, more and more aware of the energetics around me in our own home. Look at, the practices that you've been teaching people for a long time is an energetic openness and an awareness that gets cultivated. It's part of the cultivation of these practices of reconnection. And what I'm nudging toward is this last step, if you will, in this simplified layout, is the transformative, is the level at which it really doesn't matter how steep it is out ahead of us, how daunting the future can look. If the folks at the extreme end of the collapse aware community, they call themselves the near-term human extinction crowd. Now that's more extreme than I'm personally, where I locate myself, but I can certainly understand how they get themselves there. And if all I've got is those earlier skills or no skills whatsoever to be more aware, it can look desperate. It can, I can go to some very shadowy places in myself as I try to survive and hold on and take care of my family. I think we all know those kind of apocalyptic, pictures and so on. What I've seen time and time again in my own experience and with other folks is that the degree to which they'll sincerely engage with these practices of reconnection and stepping toward the transformative, we start to be able to have an almost instantaneous connection at the level you were describing. Having experienced, kind of surprising, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like we didn't know each other from anybody.
Mm-mm.
And we've been in an hour or two of classes up till now. And then all of a sudden, there's this remarkable, in fact, I can feel it right now between us as I'm just recalling it back up.
Right.
There is a way to be able to, if a person's never heard of this stuff before,
Right.
to start to generate a capacity to to have that presence
Right.
with the people they love.
In their
It
lives.
is a cultivatable skill. So thanks for sitting through all that. You were asking, what can a person do? It's really appropriate to learn the basic skills first.
Yeah.
They can be kind of even boring. It's simple. It's simple mindfulness practice. It can be, learning how to sit still and be present to our thinking and our sensations and so on. Those basic skills are really important. And then just stepping further and further as we kind of flex our muscles and start to get some inner resources that we can call on.
What was fascinating to me, Dean, in the course you did, Dancing at the Edge, is you had some co-facilitators.
Mhm.
They were all men. I'm fascinated by this capacity, and I'm going to date myself here. My dad was of the generation that we would say had no emotional intelligence skills. He was a scientist. He was a brilliant man.
Mhm.
And he didn't have any really emotionally intelligence training or abilities in any way. And toward the end of his life, he was having significant problems. My mom had died in 1990, and a year later he remarried, and he and my stepmother were having significant problems. And so they would often call me to, help them out and sort of mediate. And at one point I asked my dad, did you think when you and my stepmom married that you had the same sort of emotional money in the bank? You had the same sort of level of deposits with my stepmom that you did with my mom after 20 some years of marriage and lots of love and experience together. Did you just assume that you had that? And he was like, of course I did. And so, like, really not able to even understand, well, why would that have been a problem? I mean, actually, toward the end of his life, things changed and he did have more awareness, and he was able to see some things clearly and make amends, but it was something that grew out of suffering. It wasn't something that anyone in his generation had trained him for or given him. And from his perspective, I think that was the woman's job to, like, handle the emotional stuff. That couldn't possibly be his job. So it was fascinating to me, Dean, that in this course of amazing, which created this amazing presence and this heart opening. In Kundalini Yoga, we say that the mind is meant to be the servant of the heart. And, that you sort of recreated in this context some of the most powerful moments of presence and heart connection with people that weren't even in the room with each other and were situated all over the world, who had come together in this sudden community, and all the facilitators were men. I just found that really interesting.
I'm both appreciative of what you're saying, and I'm embarrassed by what you're saying. It's the first time it even dawned on me that not only were we all male, but we were all white. I'm shocked that it's really, I'm that thick that I hadn't seen that. I'm not happy about that. I'm thrilled at how the course went. I love knowing these other men. It's great. But needless to say, I'm in active search for
Well,
having it be both diverse in gender and diverse in color.
but that isn't my point. My
No,
point
I'm clear.
is,
Thank you.
my
Yeah.
point here is, um, can we clone you? Can we, how do we, can we lay you down on the copy machine? Like how can these, and what was really wonderful is there was an equal amount of men and women in the
Right.
participants. So obviously men are drawn to this, where in so many of my trainings that I attend or I offer,
Yeah.
it's women. It's women, because aren't women
Yeah.
the ones, the spiritual and emotional keepers of the hearth and the home and the
Sure.
heart? And really, no, really, it's wonderful to have a fully realized human being, of, across the binary,
Yeah.
that we don't have to be pigeonholed anymore. And so, yeah, I wonder if you would just speak to, um, do you feel like this was a skill set that was always with you? Or do you feel like this was a skill set that was honed by seeing male mentors who were really actively in the right brain, actively connecting? And was it shocking when you first noticed it?
Um, I wish I could tell you that I have a long list of exemplars of men that were mentors, particularly with this skill set. There are a few in terms of who I, have been mentored by, and I deeply appreciate for his range in the area that you're talking about, particularly including grief, is therapist, and he calls himself a soul activist named Francis Weller. I
And
think he's an incredible exemplar of
he's
the
my teacher as
richness
well.
that's available. Yeah. And I know that there are others. It's a little unfair. I'm not remembering them to be able to acknowledge them right now. There are others, but really where I got my anchoring in what you're pointing at is when I was a kid, very early teens. I watched Jacques Cousteau's specials on Sunday nights occasionally, and he would, of course, reveal this ineffable beauty of the oceans and so on. It would move me to tears, just the beauty of it. But he would finish up his specials by saying, this beautiful place we've been exploring for this past time, look at the damage that human beings are doing. And if this continues, this whole area will be devastated. And he would say with his lovely lilting French accent and so on. And I noticed that none of the adults, male or female, were in tears like I would be in tears. And for that matter, no other young person that I knew. It was just that was one of my big red flags early on of, we're gonna kill this earth. We're gonna kill the oceans, and that'll just be the first step. And that's, at like 12. And it was there that I started to really research for where can I go for a whole different orientation. And I couldn't really go toward people. I didn't see anyone that I could go to say, can you show me how to love Earth, or how to connect with these energies and this beauty in a way that I can make a difference? Because I don't see any other, I don't see that in the human realm. I see us as decimators. We're well intended, but we're decimating it. And so my particular anchoring was through earth-based, through transformation-based, through plant medicine-based, and other ways of transforming my seeing and perception in the world, to be able to see when it finally came time for me to connect with the kind of energy I'm assuming you must be talking about in your training with women. I got some extraordinary training from women in my life, really powerful women who were deeply connected with what we're talking about, the life energies and the earth energies and so on. And I finally got to see that it gave me a full context for how I, as a male, could do something other than the toxic male or the business as usual male. I, I know it's a long-winded response, but there really weren't a lot of early models. Yeah.
You know, it seems to me, hearing that story about you watching those specials, that you have become the mentor you most needed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's really why I put together the work that I put together. Is I'm putting together the resources that I wish I had had at a number of different stages of my life, but especially this existential stage of life. Yeah.
So I have, in the last 5 years, I do coaching and I do personal clearing, and I have a lot of younger and younger clients coming to me, teenagers, who are experiencing tremendous anxiety. And I don't know that I've ever heard a professional talk about this, but I believe that the reason we're seeing, I don't know anyone personally under the age of 30, and most people 30 to 40. I don't know anyone under 30, though, who is not dealing with either depression or anxiety, or depression and anxiety.
Right.
And so from my perspective, you know, and what I do anytime there is something physical going on with my body, I'm looking at how can I support my body in the physical way that it needs to be supported with whatever it needs, and how can I look at the emotional and the spiritual and the mental cause.
Yeah.
And so when I put my attention on that with these young people, what I recognize is that, yes, we need to address this at the individual level and maybe the family level, but we also need to recognize that when the majority of our young people are experiencing and expressing this, it's a systemic, it's a whole problem. We are all part of the anima mundi. We are all part of the body of the earth, the soul of the earth. And this is a global problem. This is a problem that I can't look away from.
Yeah.
I can't look away from this. I can't look away, just like with my racial equity work, like I can't look away from what happened in Buffalo, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, to George Floyd, to Breonna Taylor. I can't look away. And this is an indication that we have a problem, Houston. We have a problem that is systemic. And I just want to thank you so much, because I have moments that I have an interesting relationship with hope because of my work with the dying.
Yes.
And I'm very realistic and practical about what I will allow myself to hope for. And the things I've learned from you give me hope that when things become difficult in my own life, I have ways to resource myself and those around me and meet difficult moments well. And so I really want to appreciate that, give gratitude for that. And I want to, tell people how they can get in connection with you. I know you mentioned earlier that there's going to be a digital or just a self-paced
Mhm.
program that people can take themselves through. I'm a little partial to the group experience. So I'm going to tell people, you've heard my experience of what happened for me in these 5 Saturdays. I would recommend a live experience if that's going to come up very soon.
Yeah. Well, it will be coming up. I would say by end of summer, this is 2022, so end of summer, we should be able to have another larger group at scale for that material. There are going to be a number of other offerings, though. So I would just recommend people could start by going to livingresilience.net, which is the website, and sign up for the newsletter. And that way you'll get the updates about our shift to Mighty Networks. It's going to be a whole lot easier to be able to connect with other people with particular subgroup interest, like, for instance, young people who are looking for, how do I create a circle of people my own age and so on. We're absolutely headed that way, and I couldn't be more happy about that. I would also recommend, please put my email address in the show notes if you'd like. I'm at safecircle@gmail.com, and I'm at least a number of times each week, I'm speaking with somebody who is wondering, how can I find the resources that I need, wherever they're showing up on that scale that we talked about. And so I'm happy to just help people find the resources that seem to fit where they're willing to engage. I'm also really excited to be a part of a newly forming collaborative group that's a loose affiliation around the world of people who provide alternative mental health offerings, like facilitated workshops or coaching and so on. And that includes some youth professionals. And in addition to the people like the Climate Psychology Alliance, which in each major developed country, there are these alliances. I know the UK has a very active chapter, and the US is getting more active, and so on. There are resources available. And I would just invite people to don't hesitate to just send me an email, and let's hook up, let's do a Zoom call and find you the resources that most fit your needs. I find myself in kind of a rapid fire trying to get the information in mode, and this just bumped right in and just said, slow down. This is not a good time to try and white knuckle it, to try and do this alone. This is a horrid time to try and muscle it through and figure that whatever these coping strategies you might have had for the earlier years of your life, no matter how skilled you are, you're going to need more, and you're going to need the people that you love around you, and people who can have some amount of ability to hold space for each other in a circle. That's a skill set to learn, and that's part of what I'm offering in the work that I'm doing. I just recommend highly, find your people.
Yeah.
Really commit yourself to the kind of centering that you were sharing that was early on in your setting the foundation for the work that you've now been doing for so long. This is the time to find that center, to realize likely we don't have much of a center, and this is a real good time to be building it out and expanding our capacity to be present. So they're just an open offering to reach out. Let me help you find the resources. If I don't have them myself, I'm happy to get you to the folks who can help.
Yeah.
And build out your tribe in the best possible way.
Well, thank you so much for everything you've offered to my community. I'm so grateful. I've been taking notes. And if there's anything else that you want my community to know, just send it to me and I'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dean. It's been wonderful.
Melody, it's also been a real pleasure for me, from your participation in the course to your generous invitation to do this conversation with you. And just a forewarning, I'm going to be sending out the invitation to you to come speak on my podcast, and also maybe some other sort of collaborative things that might be worth talking about. So thank you for all you're doing as well.
You are so welcome.